The Operations and Planning Committee meeting of June the 10th, 2021. The invocation will be by
You have
Mr.
reached your recording
Amos Berry,
limit.
and
Please
the
delete old recordings and try again.
Pledge of Allegiance will be by Mr. Sam Johnson.
Let us pray. Lord, we thank you for this beautiful day that you give us, that we can assemble here together, take care of the business, the Solid Waste Authority, and for the people of Rotary County. We ask that you bless each and every one of us as we leave here today and return us home safe. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the first item we have on our agenda is the Class 2 landfill expansion update. Oh, sorry about that. And we do. I need approval of the agenda. So move, we have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda has been approved. Our first item is the Class 2 landfill expansion update.
Craig with Garrett Moore will be doing it, Craig Portman.
Okay, Mr. Craig, you're on.
He has a PowerPoint portion.
Thank you, Ms. Creech. Thank you, Mike. This is the Class 2 landfill expansion update. Our last update was given at the May board meeting on the 25th of May last month. A little bit has gone on since then. My intention is to bring you up to speed on what has gone on since then and kind of give you an outlook of what's going to go on the next few weeks. Again, project background, we split the project into two parts. Project number one was the 1187 Bar Area Development and Infrastructure Improvements Project. Project number two is the 1187 Bridge and Bar Area Backfill Project. Project number one was awarded to King Construction in November of 2020 for a contract price of $3.1 million. It was awarded with two different substantial completion dates, one for the landfill infrastructure of January 30th, 2021, and one for haul road completion of the 1187 side of May 20th, 2021. As of today, all landfill infrastructure is in place, consisting of two new stormwater detention ponds, about a half mile of heavy-duty haul road between the bridge and the Class 2 landfill base grades. All disturbed areas have been seeded. Guardrail was installed yesterday, and this portion of the project was deemed substantially complete at the end of January 2021. The 1187 haul road consisted of completing approximately 2.5 miles of heavy haul road from the bridge to the most distant bar area on the 1187. As of today, all wetland crossings are complete, and substantial completion was reached on June 4th, 2021. These are some pictures I shared at the last meeting. This is one of our two new stormwater detention basins. To get you oriented, the bridge is here. The scale house and office buildings will be down towards the bottom of your screen. New detention pond and new access road. Second of the two detention basins that were constructed as part of this project. The 1187 end of the haul road, so this is at the bridge, just 2.5 miles from where we started. To update you on contract status, nothing here has changed since the last update. We've mentioned the substantial completion date for the landfill side. The 1187 side was June 4th, which was last Friday. We've had 19 adverse weather days, 14 of which are eligible for extension. Recognizing the adverse weather days, the haul road substantial completion is June 9th, 2021. Again, the contractor finished early relative to that, and we'll make all these, formalize all the contract adjustments at contract closeout. As of now, there are no change orders pending, and the contractor does not anticipate any. Project number 2 was awarded to King Construction Services in January of 2021 for the contract price of $11.1 million and a substantial completion date of March 31st, 2022. A summary of work in place to date on the bridge. We have 400 feet of deck installed from the landfill end, 50 feet of deck installed from the 1187 end, and we have crews working concurrently toward one another. And right now, the contractor is looking at completion late July for the bridge. And again, the contractor doesn't anticipate any delays either with construction or material availability. As far as the bar area backfill, we've entered a transition phase where all the material that's been made available from Tract D bar areas is exhausted. Currently, the contractor is maintaining dewatering, and we have approximately 250,000 cubic yards of backfill placed. And I will note that in the board meeting last month, our estimate was 275,000. This is confirmed by survey. Again, this is approximate, but we're in the neighborhood of $250,000 of backfill, 250,000 cubic yards of backfill in place. We have a new stormwater detention basin that's partially graded, and right now, Tract D bar area restoration is ongoing. This is a snapshot of where we are effectively today. This is on the 1187 side, looking towards the landfill. And we have about 150 feet of bridge deck to complete the span. Partially graded new stormwater or sedimentation pond. And when this is complete, it will actually extend over into this old flooded bar area. So this is only a portion of what's going to be constructed eventually. Phase 2 backfill area, phase 1 backfill area is in the background here. And the next image shows a close-up of where we are, phase 1 today. As I mentioned, the project is entering a transition phase where the primary focus of the work is on the bridge right now. And once the bridge is complete, we will start hauling material over from the 1187 side. This is a picture of the current configuration of the Tract D bar area. Get you to a point of reference here is the live oak tree that we've kind of used as a benchmark in past discussions. Contract status, again, unchanged since our last update in the May board meeting. Contractors experienced 12 total adverse weather days through April. We have none in May, and there are 133 adverse weather days built into the contract. At this time, there's no adjustment to substantial completion for reason of adverse weather. And I mentioned we're entering a transition phase as we wait for the bridge to complete so that we can begin hauling backfill across from the 1187 side. And in the meantime, the contractor is maintaining the dewatering effort in the phase 2 backfill. We had a change order early on to mitigate some explosive gas conditions during initial construction of the bridge. The contract changes are tabulated here. So we have the contract price increase of $22,000 and some change, and 7 calendar days for the delays experienced while we mitigated, which gives us a revised substantial completion date of April 7th, 2022. At this point, welcome any questions you may have.
I would like to know, we have had some pretty substantial rains the last week. How have the ponds been working as far as that was concerned? I know it's not anything like hurricanes but we did have quite a bit of rain the last few weeks.
I can tell the ponds look exactly as I would expect them to look after several intense rainfall events. They're mostly dewatered at this point, which is how they're intended to function. And by all accounts, they're performing just as intended.
Okay, they're performing the way you thought they should.
Yes, ma'am.
With that amount of rain. Okay. Do any of the board members have any questions?
Did the ponds fill up during the rain?
Partially, but not completely.
If they filled up, they overflowed?
Now, they have a low-level dewatering device. It's got a skimmer. It's if you can go back several pictures, Cecil. They have a skimmer device that's installed to dewater the pond from the top down.
Keep going.
So, one more forward. All right. Right down here, that's a skimmer, and it's
Yeah,
attached to
that's the new one. I was talking about the old current ponds.
the old current ponds around the other side of the landfill. Is that what you're referring to? So those also have low-level outlets. They have, the primary spillway is into the top of the riser, and they each have a low-level orifice to allow those to dewater over time as well.
Right, the last time you were here, we were talking about those ponds and their ability to hold the watershed from the landfill, whether or not that watershed was having time for the sediment to settle down before it leaks out into the Terrace Swamp. So that, those 2 half-acre ponds, if they ever hold the water runoff from 160 plus acres.
Yes, sir. Those two, to be clear, they're unrelated to the Class 2 landfill project, but they are performing as intended with the rehabilitation that we did over the summer.
I came out Sunday morning, because it rained in North Myrtle Beach all weekend, a lot. And I came out, I wanted to see what the ponds looked like. And these, on this road down to here, looked like they had about a foot of water on them. And as you can see here, through construction, this is about as high as it's got on the banks, and you can kind of see where the water got its high, so I don't think the pond will ever overflow.
I understand that, but that pond there is bigger than the current pond that we got that holds the landfill.
Do what now?
The pond there is bigger than the 2 ponds we got containing the landfill now.
Yeah, but the pond, the big pond we're filling,
Talking about the ones, on the other
the
side.
2 we redesigned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we made the statement last time that those ponds didn't overflow water into Terrace Swamp. I just don't, I mean, I've done a little bit of research while, between our last meeting and now, and there's approximately, and I only got a 2D model because I could only do it on computer. Nobody knew how big the landfill was last time or wouldn't answer the question, but the 2D said it was about 160 plus acres. And we got 2 half-acre ponds catching all that water and that sediment before it goes off into Terrace Swamp. My question is again, are those 2 half-acre ponds, are they large enough to hold the rain we got to come off that 160 plus acre landfill to keep the sediment from going into the... I know you're an engineer, you can do the calculations. I know 1 inch of rain is 22,000 gallons over 1 acre of land. So 22,000 gallons over 160 plus acres is a lot of watershed. I don't think those ponds are large enough.
You're correct, it is a lot of runoff. And I will answer your question, yes, they are designed, and the performance,
Come back next time, I want the calculations, please.
the design performance is required to meet a minimum settling efficiency for a minimum design storm. And
When you come back, I'd like the calculations of how much those 2 stormwater ponds can hold.
okay,
Thank you.
so
I know the volume of water that they can hold, period of time before they start outflowing into Terrace Swamp.
okay, the last part of your question I can answer now. Ponds are permitted to, detention ponds that are dry, this dry detention pond.
Correct.
They're designed to let water out as it comes in a controlled rate.
I understand.
So anytime it rains and there's a discharge, these have the potential to discharge into stormwater outfall.
I understand.
So all these ponds, all the ponds around the facility are designed to meet county standards. There's a minimum amount of storage per acre draining to it. There's a minimum storage requirement, there's a minimum detention time requirement. Dry ponds have a minimum drawdown. You have a window that you need to draw down a certain
I
size.
don't think you followed my question. or what I'm getting at. We're dealing with a landfill here, and we're dealing with Sterrett Swamp, which leads directly to Waccamaw,
Yes, sir.
okay? And the minimum ain't good enough. It's never been good enough out here. I've been on here for 4 years, and nobody's never wanted a minimum of nothing. If our ponds are filling up, and then during a rain event, and leaking into Sterrett Swamp, prior to giving enough time for sediment and the runoff of all that leachate that's coming off of that pond, off the landfill, we got a problem. Now, you can answer that, you're an engineer. Let me know when you come back, how much volume and how many gallons those two runoff ponds can hold from the water coming off of that landfill site. That's what I need to know.
Without,
I understand I've been in the erosion control business for 15 years, so I understand all that. I get it, I build sediment ponds. So I understand what you're telling me, but we keep bouncing around my question.
I don't think that, and I'm not an engineer, but I don't think that all the run water coming off, we could build a pond big enough to hold it continuously for 24, 48 hours before it discharges. What Garrett Moore was charged to do was to build it to county and state standards. That's what they've done. If we want to go above that, then the board needs to instruct us, we want this. And then we'll tell y'all how much it's gonna cost to do it. Pretty much right?
Yeah, that's correct. So we designed to
County standard.
county stormwater standards, and we designed to DEC solid waste standards.
Well, I'd still like to answer my question, and that'll determine which direction I hire Lee or whoever goes.
But I think we need to look at all the ponds in the system, not just these two.
No, I agree.
Okay.
I agree.
Because the big one down here right beside the scale house, that's one that we just kind of gloss over that it's almost complete.
Well, I may be completely wrong, but we got a big pond. If you go around behind the mechanic shop, keep on going over there next to the leachate collection system, that big pond behind that. I mean, we may even find a way that we can utilize that big pond. I don't know.
I don't know if that pond would meet the standards for DHEC, though, if you did it, because it's gotta have clay liner in it and stuff like that.
I'm not against the clay liner. I'm not against anything we gotta do to keep, whatever we got to keep leachate from going in that Waccamaw River. I got a river house right down the road. I don't want to be playing in leachate.
Yeah. I just want to understand what they was instructed to do when they built it, so. If the board wants us to go following that, they need to tell us.
Get us an answer to my question, and then that'll give us a direction.
Yeah, I apologize if it feels like I'm dancing around the question to be as succinct as I can without knowing the exact number of gallons that each pond can hold.
I understand, I throwed you a curveball.
So,
I understand, I throwed you a curveball. But you're gonna have plenty of time to get it straightened back up.
these ponds have been designed to
I understand.
meet both county stormwater and DEC solid waste rules.
I understand.
It would be interesting to know what if we are not doing that, what we could do in conjunction with the other things we have and whatever, and of course, then look at the money. So that is a good suggestion for us to look at. I think throughout the county on certain events that all of the counties and cities here have found themselves in problems with every water body we have in Conway right on through, losing stuff into water that I don't think any of the residents would have liked. So I think everybody has the same problem that we're facing in this county because it's low, and that's happened in most everything. So it would be a good thing to know, and to know where we stand and to see what we could possibly do differently.
And I think if you looked at our ponds and then looked at the regs, got an engineer to look at the regs, they are exceeding what we are required to have, but not to the point that they hold the whole water. But it is exceeding what the amount of water that we're required to have.
Right. Okay.
And I've had that discussion with Jared Moore about, are we at minimum standards or do we exceed it somewhat? And I've been told we exceeded.
And I'm sure whatever we had the money to do and chose to do, you'd be willing to do and capable of doing, that's not a problem. But all of that makes a difference, whether it's county, city, or us, in the money and what you do and how that works out. So that's a good thing to have for the board to look at in the future. Any other questions?
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Is there anything else you're doing? Because I know you need to leave and we need to let you do what you need to do first.
No, ma'am, unless somebody needs me,
Okay. Thank you very much.
Have a safe trip back home.
Yeah, be careful.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, number 2 is the landfill gas expansion update, phase 1 and 2.
We have Mr. Chris Carlson Environmental, and he's gonna give us a quick update on our landfill gas project. Give us a little bit more than what we did last time he was here, and so. Lisa, trying to get it up, we'll get it up and look at it.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Again, like I said, my name is Chris Carlson with Carlson Environmental, and so we are landfill gas and air compliance consultants. So the next slide. So if you recall, back in January, February, came out, we talked about the gas system projects for this year. And what we did to help expedite a portion of this project to get the odors controlled quicker, to try to focus our efforts on the areas of landfill that we assessed were the likely greatest contributors to excess odors, excess gas emissions, the places we needed to fight where landfill gas often does negative things to a landfill, right? It pushes out liquid from your soil cover, provides extra safety concerns. Went ahead and split this into 2 projects. So phase 1 is 90% complete. We have one last thing to do in my last slide. I'll show you what we still have left to do in that project. That project came in at budget, no change orders. So great project, went through very quickly. And I think, again, I can say based on my nostrils driving around the landfill, right? I think it's much better than we had before, am I right? So again, I think we hit the high spots. We still have some work to do. Staff is working pretty hard to tune that system in. Right now, based on what you're looking at on phase 2, we've had to take some of phase 1 offline. The pieces, I believe, that are still controlling the worst of the worst concern have stayed online. But we'll have probably a better picture of the entire, let's just call it, benefit and upgrade once we get further into the fall, right? It takes about 90 to 120 days to tune and balance a biological system like this and get it back into tune. And so once we start the 90-day clock, and that's when I would expect to see some improvement. So phase 1 did a good job, and again, focused mostly on the West Hill, focused mostly on the C&D area. There was a few issues here in the sub-D that we're able to target. But phase 2, we segregated off the areas mostly in the subtitle D Hill. And so everything you see there in color is what we've added. And most of this is 20 some odd vertical gas wells that have been added. About half of those are new, half of those are replacement wells. A vertical gas well that we have only lasts about 5 to 10 years based on conditions in the landfill causing that well to fail. As we talked about before, this landfill is full of water, right? You just imagine where you are. Also, our waste stream here is fairly wet. And so therefore, as we extract landfill gas to a gas well, with it comes liquids. And with that comes all the things with the liquids, right? The leachate we talked about a second ago, right? All the grit and debris. And so the way a gas well is built, it clogs that filter media around the well. And so that decreases the lifespan. So what we do every 2 to 3 years is we'll go through an assessment and determine which wells need replaced. And of this one, we had about 10 that needed to be replaced based on what they were performing. We've also, as part of this project, have new gas components being installed, what we consider to be the active phase, the active area. Now, never ideal, right? You're always in somebody's way out there, but I can report that those 4 or 5 vertical wells are the most productive you have probably on the entire site right now. Would not allow us even to keep the caps on that blew in the air. So again, we do expect to get quite a bit of fuel, quite a bit of resource out of that. We did have some odor, and there is some fresh trash odor in the middle of every active area. And so we do expect that these will help control control that as well. But again, we do it only because we know that's where we can get great gas. I will remind everybody, this gas system is not regulatory required, right? We are a gas system that is voluntary. You did this years ago to both be good to the environment and to help promote your gas energy project with Santee Cooper. And so again, we do a test every 5 years, and you have a renewal of that test coming up this December, and that'll give us indication as to whether or not we'll have to switch our mindset over to regulatory. And I think Ms. Chairwoman made a question last time, is are we designed properly? Yes, we are, right? So everything we do now is anticipation of that happening at some point in the future, that we will have to transition ourselves over to that stage. And so once we know you have about 30 months, 2.5 years to get your act together and get yourself ready to go in, so we got plenty of time to go and address anything that we don't have ready, but that'll let us know. And so what's the difference at that point? Well, a little more money for regulatory reporting. You're going to be required at that point to quickly address problems. Right now, you have the luxury of time, right? You can have a problem, you can say, well, if it's not affecting anything, I can hold off on that and do it on my schedule. Once you're in the system, you're on their schedule, and their schedule's pretty fast. So that's really what drives costs to become gas systems. And so in the budgets with Stephanie, we've been including those costs and just kind of kicking them down the road for you guys in your budgets to say, look, at some point, those costs go up, the staffing, the manpower goes up, because again, you've got to be able to respond faster to the pumping and to the gas system operations and maintenance. So not there yet, not there yet. Let's see, we're also addressing, I guess go to the next slide, Cecil. So this kind of gives you the goals, and I'm kind of going through these as I'm talking, but we are addressing that last bullet point, conveyance and leachate and landfill gas liquids. Now, the board, you put in a new pipeline to your PUTW this past year, and have gotten that hooked up. Well, we also put in a pipeline from the middle part of the landfill, from a lift station there, out to the tanks, and that pipeline is going to be put in as part of this project. It's going to help us pump liquids from throughout the landfill to that lift station. It was primarily for landfill gas liquids, but we do have a couple leachate lines that probably going to be nice to dump into that. And what that does is just relieve the pressure of that system having to pump all the way from one end of the landfill to the other end. And we use typically pneumatic pumps in the landfill gas system, and those pumps, while having a great lift suction, right, don't do a great job pushing. And so we want to be able to decrease what pressure they have to do to get liquid to the tank. And so that system is going to be put in, and that's been a while coming. We had that lift station in a couple of years back. Now it's time to get the force main correct back to the tanks. But other things here on this list to point out, greenhouse gas emissions, we always like to point that out, that again, we do have to annually summarize our emissions to the EPA, and anytime you can expand your gas system and take what was once emitting to the atmosphere freely, right, and be able to harness that gas and combust it some way, we can reduce your greenhouse gas emissions by a factor of 20 plus times. And methane from landfills is the number 2 in the world, minus cows, right, throughout the world. And I think I mentioned this in the last presentation, that the EPA, or NASA really, is starting to fly the country with satellites. And the review of greenhouse gas emissions from landfills is going to become a satellite process in which we'll have people at the EPA or SCDHEC on the computer drawing up a satellite and being able to see when it flies your landfill and see your emissions. And just about every presentation at the National Environmental Research Education Foundation Global Waste Symposium that was held 2 years ago was on this I guess, advancement that's coming. And where it started, if I can take a second to talk about that, where it started was in California, right? So they were flying some areas, and they were looking at agriculture and some of the plants in which they thought were emitting gas emissions. And Jet Propulsion Laboratory happened to cross over one of the big landfills there near LA, and it blew their screen completely out. And they said, oh my goodness. And of course, our poor friends at one of our large waste operators got dinged pretty heavily, because they ended up having to answer for the reasons as to why their field data indicated they were harnessing their emissions, yet this satellite shows that this red is all, it's fire. And so they ended up having to spend a lot. They fixed it, but EPA and NASA were like, aha, we got something here. And so now we're seeing that that's going to become a big deal. So it's got everybody scared, like it should, right, in the industry. And so what's happening now is they're pretty much put everybody on notice that give you a couple of years, that's going to happen. And where the new rules have come out, so when Obama was in office, EPA came out with a new rule called Subtitle XXX, which again, you're not there yet,
But what that did is it tightened up the emission standards, and so now again, they're putting more of a focus on surface emissions, which again is that emitting from the landfill. It's not coming from your engines, not coming from your flare stack. Those are fine. This is just freely emitting, and every time we do these expansions, we take that percentage of freely emitted gas and offset it. And so when we do your calculations, and we did it a couple years back, we showed you, again, an equivalency of how many tons of carbon monoxide, or carbon dioxide equivalent we're taking off the atmosphere by having the voluntary. And so we were happy to do those calculations for you again, but it's pretty sizable. I mean, it's hundreds and hundreds of houses and hundreds of cars off the roadway. And so again, it is definitely something that, again, landfills don't focus on it, they're gonna get in trouble. And I think you guys are in a good position. Last piece to talk about that, not to get you too scared, is where we have to control gas is not up to the moment of you putting waste in. You have 2 to 5 years after waste gets deposited before you're required to control. But again, as we talked about in the last conversation, here we're getting the waste after about 2 years, right? So we're not waiting till the 5 years, we're going after about 2 years for a lot of these reasons. Again, odors, recovery, site safety, all good reasons as to why you go ahead and every couple of years go ahead and expand the gas system. I think we touched everything there. Go ahead, Susan. So this is phase 2. So I just kind of summarized real briefly kind of where we are. We're about 25% with the piping complete, and these are just different sizes of piping that's been installed. The contractor, it's SCS Engineers on phase 2, but they've gotten all the piping fused up. It's all on site. The third piece there is the wells drilled. As I said, we're 100% complete with the 22 wells, roughly split between redrills and new wells. And then down there at the bottom, we've got almost all the abandonments. And abandonment is when we take the old well offline and put the new well online, and then the tie-ins. We expect to be complete with phase 2 sometime in July, again, barring weather and different issues. And as I mentioned at the very bottom point there, it takes about 90 days or so to get the well full tuned in. So I would hold our feet to the fire sometime in November, and hopefully we'll see some pretty good improvement. I think we went up about 300 SCFM based on the last, so another things offline now that we're working through, but that was a very nice increase of SCFM of gas that we saw for the first phase, and I would anticipate this second one doing about the same. All right, so here's some nice photos to look at. So this is vertical well drilling, and this is when we install the gas wells vertically into the waste, kind of showing you what that process looks like. And so the top row there shows the drill rig as it bores in. That's a 36-inch diameter hole, and we go down about 80% of the waste depth. We try to stay at least 15 to 20 feet off the synthetic liner system, because as you can imagine, that's not a fun day if you have to piece or go back through your liner. So we try to stay well off that. We use all the survey data and make sure we're in the right spots. The wells themselves are made out of Schedule 80 PVC. The bottom 80% is perforated pipe. The top is solid pipe. Again, we're applying a vacuum to the well, so we'll make sure that we don't draw air in. We'll just get the landfill gas. The bottom shelves there kind of show you some of the grades we put in, the safety features. There is, non-calcareous, so we don't use limestone. Limestone does, precipitate and react to the leachate into the acid, and so we use a river rock or a granite to go back into the wells. Try to keep them all vertical and plumb and whatnot. So go next one, please. All right, so here's some more shots. So this shows different pieces, different items going back into the well, so the well construction side. So we fill it up with gravel, up past the perforations, and then we put a few seals in, and one of those seals is a bentonite clay that we use to, again, prevent the landfill gas from coming up and the air from coming down, and we backfill it up with soil. So that very last picture on the bottom kind of shows you what a finished well looks like prior to its wellhead going on. And so that white cap is what I was telling you was blowing off out there in the active phase. We had to actually screw them in with multiple screws or else they wouldn't stay on. And that little chicken wire is actually a safety grate that goes on, and that gets buried in as the vacuum lateral eventually gets constructed up beside it. That helps protect in case, again, as you imagine, you got that borehole going down 80 feet. What would happen is some of that soil compacted quickly. Well, that'll keep Mr. Drake from falling, down, right? So it bridges that whole area and does that. And again, that was a actual thing that happened. It's like in any industry, you add things because things happen. And so there was a guy in Ohio that had a nice surprise one day as he was reading a gas well. And so now that is standard practice on every landfill gas well in the country. Slide. So this is the well abandonments, and so this just kind of shows you again the messy job of getting into landfill and actually capping off. And what we do here too is we make sure that those old wells are abandoned nice and deep in the landfill, and that they can't, you know, again, we don't have gas emissions coming back up. We do use bentonite all around it. What they've done there at the bottom is they're pouring bentonite on top of that well to seal it. And so again, this gets back to those surface emissions we were talking about before. If I had a place where landfill gas was gonna come out, I would think it's gonna come out of where these wells were, because that was already coming out there, but I wanna seal that off. Go to the next slide. I think this should be piping. Yep, so here's some piping shots. We typically trench into piping going back to all the wells. Most of these are gas piping. We also take, and when I say gas piping, I mean the vacuum piping that goes to the gas well itself that provides the suction and sucks the landfill gas out of the vertical well. We combine that with those two other pipes you see. There's an air pipe that provides the pneumatic supply for the pumps, and then a liquid conveyance pipe that pipes the liquid now back to this lift station we talked about before. And that first picture on the left kind of gives you an idea of what a horizontal collector will look like. We're putting a few of those in the active phase, and it's another style of collector, not vertical but horizontal. And think of a French drain with the pipe in the waste mass with gravel and the perforated pipe. So this is the end of phase one. We talked about that we're 90% complete. Well, this is my last 10%. So we have 3 of these small flares. We call them small landfill open flares. They can be called solar flares at time based on a solar panel. In your case, you actually have plumbed 240 volt single phase power to these for us to be able to get more vacuum and more power to them. So the reason for doing these was these are in the C&D area, overlay or the C&D area between the West Hill and the Old East Hill. And a little too far of a distance for us to try to take active landfill gas piping to them, but more so because that gas quality is C&D gas and it's not as nice as MSW gas. MSW gas is high in methane, low in oxygen. Construction demolition gas is typically 30% methane, a lot of H2S in it, a lot more oxygen. It's just, again, the nature of that waste material. It doesn't produce as much methane, but it does produce enough to make odor, right? And it does, unfortunately, produce H2S in higher quantities. So
Let me add a little bit to that. So y'all know, so part of the wells that we installed on C&D is going to the gasket for burning purposes. And we put these in to be able to burn these because of the length and the cost associated with the stuff. So, but you can't put but so much C&D gas in with your MSW gas because the Santee Cooper will start screaming because it messes up the whole gas system. So we have to sort of measure off how much we send and how we done. But what we did do on this thing was we got Chris to, if the gas system gets, coming off the C&D gets too bad, we can add a flare down the line, and those wells that's currently going to the skid to turn into electricity, if the gas gets too contaminated, that we can pop a flare up there and burn it rather than send it to the skid. So we did design that this time. So part of this gas off C&D is going to the skid, and then part of it is coming to these flares, which has to have an LP tank in order to make sure it stays lit because of the amount of methane that's in it.
these are really those 2 reasons, right? Distancing and the gas quality. And so we know that burning H2S, right, takes out the odor. There's other ways of getting rid of it. You guys have tried carbon tanks. You guys have tried sprinkling magic fairy dust on the ground, right? A lot of reasons is to try to get rid of the H2S. Well, this is the best way to do it, right? To burn the gas. And so what we've seen on many other sites, and we do this in Florida. Florida has a lot of Class 3 landfills that have vegetative material plus C&D. So it's a little worse than what you guys have got. And we see a tremendous amount of landfill gas out of those. And so again, same thing. It's just not enough quality to mix it with what you would want to use from a recovery basis, but it's enough to burn. And so got to get a little creative. And so we've got 3 of these going in. The SCD had just close to approving the permit. They've given us green light, but it's going to be approved next week. So we have the last week of this month, the 28th, the B&M, the contractor, set up to come out and put these in. And so they'll be delivered to the site the week of the 21st. And as Mike mentioned, to help blend in a little more rich gas, we have a propane tank there. And in case it's needed, these flares will allow the technician, Drake, or whoever's operating it, to go in there and be able to dial that in a little better. So, and that fluctuates, again, day by day. So the idea is, If there's an odor outbreak, and again, it changes and happens, you need to be able to, or your technician has the ability to sample that gas and then be able to say, okay, now I need to tune this up a little bit. So it's an ongoing adjustment process. But let's see, what else do I have in there? And they're portable, and that's one thing too, is that we made these such that we know that topography is gonna change, right? C&D landfill's gonna grow and move, and the idea is these are not permanent, so you can move them and move them around. So, and I think that may be the last slide I've got, yeah. So, any questions?
Do any of the board members have any questions?
You know, and most C&D landfills, a lot of South Carolina, do not have gas well system collection systems, am I right? Most of them.
It's the C&Ds, yes, you may be one of the only ones, yeah.
So we're doing something there to help control the odor,
Right.
but typically it's not goes in South Carolina.
And that's a good thing because we need to do that. And I agree with you, the last few times I've been out here, the odor has not been as bad. Now, whether that has to do with those, and I hope it does, or the different weather conditions, but just like today with it being overcast, it would normally be worse here, would keep it in this location. I heard you talk about pushing the gas and pulling the gas out in these wells and how they do different things. Is there any way to extract more gas at some time in these different wells and we're actually pulling out at this particular time?
So was I referring to the gas pressure, or was I referring to liquid pushing? I said liquid pushing, or gas was pushing liquid out the landfill,
Right.
is that what I mentioned?
Right.
That phenomenon is, again, when you have excess gas pressure in areas and you've got perched liquid. You know, if you look at a cross-section of landfill, you can have liquid lenses in there, and what happens oftentimes is gas pressure wants to push its way out. If there's a solid clay layer, or Wayne built a roadway up here at one point and gas can't get through that, where's it gonna go? It's gonna go sideways. And what it does often is it'll push liquid with it. And so where you'll see liquid breakouts on the side of a landfill, I would bet more than half of those are due to landfill gas pressure. And so again,
Okay.
so we know that we saw some of those before, back in the early parts of this design, and worked with your staff to say, okay, well, why don't we add extra gas wells up there and do some tow drains? And I think largely a lot of those are fixed.
Yeah.
And so again, it helps both of us. But to your point, landfill gas tuning is a lot of art. It is science, but there's a lot of art to it too, right? It's a biological system, and you kind of have to, feel the way the landfill is operating and working. And that's, again, oftentimes what people struggle with, is the fact that you can work it and you can go through it. But yes, there are ways to massage more gas out. You guys are doing a lot of that with the fact that you have a pump in every single gas well. You have a full-time person user every day, and that's their primary job, is to tune. Those are really your best tunes too.
Okay. Is there anything that you think we can do better or different?
I have always thought you do need more staff. Again, you're getting to a point where you've got a lot of pumps, and pumping is one of those items that does need people to pull them. And again, they're not foolproof. They don't. Spartanburg County, we work with those guys right now, and we just did an assessment with them in which we did a test, and we said, okay, because they're in a similar situation, they have one gas tank, and we said, look, let's go out there and let's let you look at your pumps and do everything every single week, and we're going to track how many pumps go down versus you doing it on a monthly basis versus doing it on a weekly basis, which is what we would prefer. And what they found is that their liquid flow almost doubled, and they got about 25% more gas, right? Why? Because they just got on it more. Now, again, there's a cost to that, right? There's a cost to the staffing, there's a cost to the maintenance program to do that. But again, it was one of those things where, it's the old adage, you can get 80% of your whatever it is, in this case, 80% of your landfill gas, doing most things, but pretty good. But it's that last 20% that if you want to go after it, it's going to cost you. But again, it's worth it. So like I say, so in my opinion, I would get there sooner than before your regulatory compliance requires you to do that, because that way then you'll be ready for it. It's kind of a pretty big leap to go right into that kind of cold turkey. So, if I had my druthers and had the pen and the checkbook, that's what I would say, is go ahead and hire some more folks.
Okay. Thank you very much. Number 3, we're going to be told about a walking floor trailer purchase, Mr. Besson.
Okay, so in our FY21 budget, we had a walking floor trailer. We're trying to reduce some maintenance costs at the MRF, so we had bought one for Merck, and that cost was about $90,000 is what we spent on that one. E&D recycling facility, we're currently pulling with rejects from the thing of about 10 to 12 loads a day. So I got a man that's basically taking those in a truck and pulling 10 or 12 a day to the landfill. So I'm looking at ways to cut costs. So I thought about putting in a walking floor trailer and maybe haul 4 loads a day, maybe 5. I don't know. So it would actually eliminate that additional fuel cost on the truck as well as on the fuel cost on the truck, as well as the labor cost associated with having to haul to the landfill. So we have found one, a used one, for about $15,000, $20,000, and need some minor repairs to it. We think we can do that, those repairs for $5,000 or $10,000. So we're going to take it. We just basically letting the board know and see what any discussion you may have on it. We were going to pay it out of our budget. It'd be come out of operating money, not capital. So we would have to cut our costs by $25,000 a year operating in order to buy the trailer. So we would definitely take it out of those costs, out of our operating costs, so it won't be a capital cost. So we were considering it, but we wanted to hear board input before we move forward with it.
How much money do you think it would save to have that?
You're probably looking over a period of time you'd save to pay for the trailer in 1 year.
And for 1 year,
In 1 year? Why haven't we done this before?
We've been
We're talking about it for years.
we've been talking about 10 years.
Oh, my goodness.
We should have 4 or 5 walking floor trailers out here with the chips that we've got. And Mike's gonna talk about chips further down, the line. And where we pull the stuff from number 6 building, C&D, is dumped in roll-off containers. You have to hook them up, roll them up, unhook them, put them back down after you dump them, so it's very labor intensive. These walking floor trailers can, they're pretty snazzy to watch in what they do, but,
This thing would probably be a dual use as well, because in the next thing we're talking about is the wood chips. We have a lot of people call us and want us to deliver, like City of Myrtle Beach, for instance. They want us to deliver and would be willing to pay us to deliver colored wood chips. So we would definitely use that trailer for that as well.
Okay, are there any questions of Mr. Bezel?
My calculations, we could have paid for the, walking trailer years ago. We've been giving away wood chips for as long as I can see in the budget. The truck has been hauling them off for $4 and something cubic ton or yard or whatever it is, and when I carry chips to the mill, I'm getting $22. They've been making a lot of money off of us.
we did hauling chips to Florence at one time. And our insurance, they wouldn't, we had a problem with the insurance.
We were gonna go around our buyers, that's what we were gonna do. This happened 3, 4 years ago.
Donna was still here.
Yeah, and so, maybe longer than that. So we decided we'd go directly to the mill, cut out the middleman. Get us some trailers, cut out the middleman. First thing they said is we need you to give us being an additional insured on our insurance policy. State insurance policy. I said, under no circumstances will we do that. So we're not gonna give you as an additional insured or assurance certificate to West Rock to haul chips up there. That was one of their requirements. Now, they could have changed this then, but as of when we were doing this and looking into this, I'm not talking about the state hadn't changed, but.
State law has not changed.
Yeah, the state hadn't changed. West Rock required that before they'd take it for us. When we pull our truck on the yard, they would charge us an additional insurance, and that's why we didn't back then try to move forward with that. We even looked at trying to get private insurance. Trying to do it, it wouldn't work.
There's other ways to do the RFQ for it. I'm glad we're going to put RFQ on it, the RFP. I think it should have been done a long time ago. 5,000, I think our budget is about 5,000 yards. You know, getting, how much we,
419.
419, that comes about,
A ton.
that comes about $20,000, $21,000. And the guy's hauling them to Rockport over there, he's getting about 110, 120,000.
Back then, when we were looking at it back 4, 5, 6 years ago, it was $17 a
So
ton.
he's making about
They would pay us.
$100,000 off of SWA by hauling chips from here to the West Rock. That's pretty good.
But what you're saying is we cannot haul them?
Not direct to them, because their insurance won't give them the bill as an additional insured.
Now we can, you know, get first couple of trailers, get used to them, talk about wood chip, dressing them up, dyeing them, wholesaling.
Going into the second part of it is the wood chip deal. You know, currently, Jamie was hauling. He sold all of his trailers. Currently we try to getting Holloman out of Florence. He's coming getting some of them, but not near the amount that Jamie's getting.
Well, for somebody to stop it would make it easier for us anyway, because what we have gotten in the past was when someone is doing this as a business in this area and we start doing that, then we have these private industries going to county council and saying, you shouldn't let them compete with us. And then we have a problem dealing with that. So, that will be helpful if the people we're dealing with are not doing it any longer.
Well, we'd like to sort of get the board's feeling on whether or not they even, think the trailer's a wise thing to do. We think it is, but.
I think it's a wise thing to do, and I think it's a wise thing to do to try to see if we can figure out some way to deal with the chips with that kind of money. Because we generally on recycling, a lot of times, depending on what's up and down, we lose money. Making this kind of money every year would definitely close that gap in that. So I think we need to frankly buy the trailer and figure out how to do it.
We'll go buy the trailers. And then Lloyd's of London, they cover a lot of different things. Judy Garland's leg, the best I can remember back when I was in high school.
For that kind of money, we could afford Lords of London.
And you might be able to get a supplemental insurance, you might be able to, all these wood buyers and timber buyers around here, I know lots of times we have to run our chips through them because they're the broker. And when we carry our chips to the mills, if you put out an RFP, they may supply the trailers too. If you write that in your RFP, hey, you need to supply 6
Yeah.
trailers on site at all times, you might get somebody, and then at the very least, if you say we'll split the cost of the chips, we'll supply the chips, you haul them there, we'll split it, we still gaining $12. Yeah, we still gaining.
The company that bought Holmes' trailers was a Holmes, his name was Michael Holmes. And, he hauled out for a week or two and said he couldn't make no money at it, pulled out.
Telling you a story.
He ain't been back.
Well, there's a problem there somewhere. I
We
don't know
want to
what it is.
make you aware of the trailer. We didn't want to, and we'll proceed on.
Do we need to take a vote on that? If it's in your budget
It's
already?
in the budget, it's below the.
We're gonna use it on the operating.
Well, I think it's a great idea. Thank you very much for bringing it to our attention. I think it's a great idea, and we definitely need to move on that as soon as possible. Mr. Barry?
I think we need to move on.
Okay.
Thank you. Just looking for guidance, just didn't want to do it and then the board find out about it and ask one another why.
Well, it's a good thing that you let us know.
Communication out there.
We should have done it 10 years ago.
Well-
We've been harping on trailers ever since.
Hindsight's 20/20.
Yes, ma'am.
So,
C&D recycling wood chip.
all right, so I done told part of this story, so Holmes sold his trailers and, to a guy by the name of Michael Holmes and a guy from Canal Wood, so they were connected together. came in, they pulled from us for a while, and then they said that, they couldn't make no money at it, wanted us to give them the chips, and I told them no, and they pulled out. I said I couldn't, they said they wanted to pay less, I said, you ain't gonna pay less unless I put it out to bid. Back in April,
Yeah, good God, he could take those chips and go down the road and color them and make $32 a ton.
Really?
yeah, so
We
we,
have nothing in processing.
We don't have to
He
go
make a
down the
killing.
road to color.
so we definitely wrote an RFP back in April, so anticipation of it. So we've got the RFP already written, this stuff we're trying to make the board aware of. So, but we are having a hard time getting rid of our chips. So, Holloman is coming in and out, getting a couple loads a day here or there, but we generate, when we run in full blast, we generate about 3 loads a day. So, anyway, so, we've decided to put out an RFP, what we can get for them. 2, color some and wholesale, color more and wholesale. Most people, your large landscapers, want them at a tractor trailer load at a time. They want a full tractor trailer load, they take it to the shop and then they use it up. We estimate that we will be somewhere in the $30 range for profit per ton. If we sell them tractor trailer wise. But like Ms. Creech said, our problem is you're gonna get some feedback from your people that's coloring chips and do it for us not to do it. So before I started contacting landscaping companies, or landscaping wholesalers, not companies, individual, but wholesalers, people like Evergreen, Low Country, Backwoods, Sam Johnson,
I can't do business with that.
so, but those kind of people, to get them to buy, ask them what they would they be willing and interested, if there's any interest out there. I wanted to go through this with the board to make sure that everybody was on board. And I think with this issue, we probably need to wait and report to the full board and get any feedback we need to get from them. Because we're gonna start competing with the private industry for it, but we make sure the full board's aware of it. Not that we need their vote, but we want to get their comments.
Well, I do agree that, it needs to go to the full board and they need to discuss that. Frankly, it doesn't interest me whether the private industry likes it or not. If we have something here that we need to do to deal with the most financial way that we should, to me, that's the only responsible thing that we need to do. Other people's opinion on that, to me, is beside the point. Okay, now, having said that, we do need to make sure we have an outlet for these things and look at the prices. And when you bring all of that to the full board, I'm sure that they'll make a good decision on doing that.
The board will have to set the
The
price.
price.
So we'll do that. Something that reminded me when Georgetown Steel had piles of slag on their yard. They were giving it away, doing everything in the world to get rid of it. Then all of a sudden, people started using it on hunting club roads, and IP started using a bunch of it on their roads. Then it became a commodity.
Yeah.
Then you were having to buy it. And right now, we got piles of it. We got things we can do with it. We don't have to put it in the landfill. Using some for cover and everything that we can do. And we can color it here. We're running 3 colors. We'll bring that back to the full board idea once we put it out, get everything put together, and everybody will understand that people will start complaining.
They'll get
It
over
keeps
it.
the price, tipping fees down.
Yeah.
I'll give you an idea, I think last year we did about $60,000 in chips. This year we've done, so far through May, we sold about $99,000 worth of chips, so it's a pretty good increase. But I can tell that we're selling more, so when I look at the months from last year, in April, we had a big spike. And then in May, it went down lower and lower and lower, and it went up in April this year, March, April, and it's only dropped, last year, let's say it dropped 75%, it's only dropped at 50% this year. So we sell them somewhere around the neighborhood of 100 to 200 tons a month of mulch. And not advertising it other than the normal stuff.
Well, whatever we have, in my opinion, we should be doing it financially responsible, period. Doesn't matter, that just whatever we are doing needs to be done financially correctly, responsibly, and done well. And that's what that means.
I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Johnson.
Do we wanna put a sign up right there somewhere around the weigh station that color mulch is available? Cause me as a landscaper, I can see where I bring in trash, my dump trailer,
Take out when you go.
and take out mulch when I go. Sure, there's a lot of guys that probably don't even know that it's available.
That's why we've got it right there at the scale house, and we've always kept it so they can see it.
Just a reminder of us.
Yeah, it probably hurt for us to put a sign up there. My problem is, if I got so many signs now, some of y'all sort of blend in. When you come in. You got so many, and everybody just tunes them out after a while, and you don't even see them, so,
And you always have the question, can I buy a wholesale?
yeah, what you,
That's the question.
that's the big question. People that buy them big, like your landscape and stuff, well, if I buy a tractor trailer for you, can I get them at a better rate?
Yeah.
Well, number one, I don't have a tractor trailer load. And number two, we're at a set rate right now, so,
And if we had a walking full trailer, we'd just back that thing under it and fill up the damn load and deliver it. We do it Saturday and deliver it.
You have to go to the scale house anyway, because you have to be weighed,
in and out, yeah.
so that you can always inquire with the scale house.
Yeah.
A lot of these boarding, people that board horses and stuff, they use these chips. And you're boarding lunch.
Yeah, they bring the chips out here after they clean it up from Dollywood, used to be, or no, Dixie Stampede, I think it is. They bring it out here now, but it's a little finer than that is that we use, that we.
That's all it is.
Yeah, it's more like
Shavings.
Yeah.
Well, from my standpoint, you need to continue the discussion and do the trailer and let the board know where it's going from there. Anybody else have any instructions to staff, any comments?
We'll take any guidance y'all can give.
Okay. Update and discussion on the landfill fire.
So as y'all well aware of, we had a fire on May 22nd, 2021. I got a call around 8:15 that there was fire on the landfill. By the time I started calling employees, they already knew it. Somebody come by and saw it and called Wayne Martin and said, "See a fire on the landfill." So based on our cameras, the fire started about somewhere in the neighborhood of about 8:38 p.m. in the afternoon. And by 5 minutes later, it was full blaze. Then probably by 9 o'clock, there was full staff on the landfill. There was our staff was on the landfill, and you could see them start working the fire. So, and we had it added out a few hours later. The fire department was here. We asked the fire department to stand down because we didn't want to mix water with it and create a lot of other problems. We've met with the fire department and the chief and everything to make sure there's a better understanding of what the landfill fire is and how to make sure we out it, because we smother them out. We don't add water to them because it creates steam. Steam creates more oxygen. It becomes more of a fire. So we definitely want to we smother it out with dirt. We haul dirt and we smother them out. We have tried to locate what started the fire. Can I be 100% sure what it was or what it wasn't? All I can do is where it started at, we dug it up and found a kerosene heater, like you said, in the middle of the floor. Based on to how quick the fire went, it had to have some kind of accelerant with it. So we don't know that that's what started. We don't know that that's what was at, whether it started earlier in the day, the kerosene poured down into the hill, do it. But that's our thought process. Whether it's factual, I have no way of knowing. It ain't the first fire we ever had out here. And I'm being told by DEAC that there's been multiple fires in the state because it's been so dry. We weren't the only one, because I asked that question. And we point blank, no, y'all haven't been the only one that was on fire. We have a procedure in place when a fire happens, and that's to get it, we got people strategically located close to the landfill, they're part of the fire crew. Come in, they know what to do, they know what piece of equipment they're running, and they get on them and they move. Luckily, we hadn't had any major fire. I think we had one out here in the 80s that was a major fire. But other than that one, I don't think there's been a real major fire. What I consider major is one you can't get out within a 12-hour period when you get it on the landfill. When you get to the landfill, you can't get it out. That's a major fire. You got a problem. That's just Mike Bessett's opinion. People may have other opinions, but so I think we did a good job of getting it out as quickly as possible. This one got a little bit more publicity than the one on April the 15th. But during the day, we have fires. While we're working out here, one will pop up. Especially, not so when it's wet, but when it's dry as it had been for such a long period of time. You'll have one pop up in the middle of the day, and of course we out it out, carry it, smother it out, cut the oxygen off from it, and it goes out. We burnt 2 gas wells lines that had not, the part that the flares go to, that Chris talked about. We burnt the ends of those pipes that come up out of the ground, and we dug those up to get them repaired. There was no damage to the gas system because those lines were not hooked up. And if they had been hooked up, we would have isolated that with a valve, cut them off, and carried on with the rest of the system. The gas system out there has several places that's cut off where you can isolate the landfill. So if you got a problem, you can identify where that problem is on the gas well system. So we definitely, we definitely got that working on that. We dug up those wells, and that fire went down about 2.5 feet. And there was a lot of shingles in there. So, right where the hottest part of the fire was.
Now, the fire he's talking about in the 80s was at Stump Dump over here on the old dirt road, then across the bridge, where one of the ball fields is back. That thing caught on fire back. Bob Maxwell was the only paid person in the fire department at that time. He set a fire truck on Barrett Swamp Bridge down here and pumped water on it till he said, I can't. So then Bleeds went over there
Put dirt on it.
with dirt and put it out.
So, but I'll be glad to answer any questions y'all got about it, anything. We try to educate people as much as we can with it. You know, a small lithium battery could have cost them.
Yeah.
That somebody threw it in there. You don't know what the actual cause was. I think the positive thing here was that we had staff on site and we took care of it quickly.
I think y'all did a good job doing that, absolutely. One thing, I know that we, over here in this location, and we have extended that, to take the lithium batteries and all the other batteries and the things that could potentially cause this to happen when that's done. And maybe where recycling is concerned and education is concerned, more people, it needs to be incorporated in more of our recycling and education. And I hate to ask for other signs, but there's a lot of people, it doesn't cross their mind when they change their battery out of their watch or their computers or their iPads or their telephones or their TV remote. They throw it in the trash can sitting next to the chair. And I think there would be a percentage of people, if they were aware of this, that hopefully wouldn't do that. And we already are collecting those things, and we can do that. I realize it's an expense to us, but I think that's an important expense that I think we need to bear to do that. But the things that go into the landfill that could potentially cause these things, I'd like to have a list of them. And at some point, in some way, whomever is on recycling or those kinds of committees, or our educational staff, even the ladies that are doing the Wednesday thing, this may be something they want to incorporate in their Wednesday YouTube thing, to really let people know that those things can really cause us a problem. And I know you're not gonna get everybody to do that, just like whoever threw the heater in there. And more than likely, there was some gas or oil in it. It isn't likely that they completely emptied that.
It could have been as simple as a cigarette being thrown.
Well, and
As
of
dry
course,
as it was, then you get that afternoon wind that
Right.
picks up.
and we don't need to have people working here or coming in here smoking, in my opinion.
We got signs up now.
Yeah, that they shouldn't be doing that. Yeah, another sign, there you are, but I don't think people consciously think of these things, and people smoke so much that it's just an automatic thing for them. And so even if someone on staff sees them smoking in the vehicle or whatever, I think we need to remind them that it's not as important for them to smoke that minute as it is for us not to have to deal with this kind of problem on the landfill or for the people around it, or to do that. So I really think we need to educate people about some things that don't cross their mind, if that's possible, when you look at your next budget for the teaching the children and that kind of thing. Children tend to tell their parents. If they saw them throw a battery away or whatever, they might say, well, we were taught you don't need to put that in there, and they have a place for that. So hopefully we can educate people. And the other thing I wanted to ask you, is there any equipment or anything else that you feel we need to do to make sure we can get here as quickly as possible and have enough equipment, enough dirt on hand, enough whatever we need to make sure we can do that as quickly as possible? If there's anything you as staff need, to me, that's not a wish list, that's something that we need to have.
We are doing some research on some products. You don't know if they work or not.
Right.
Everybody's got the best product in the world. There's one company that, of course, when we got the fire, I started getting all these emails about this
Right.
product's good, this will put it out, this will put it out, this will do this. And of course, we're in this research phase now, trying to get some references on some stuff. And one of them was you put it in a hydro seeder and you spray it and it just out. I'm afraid, my question is, what kind of chemicals are in that that's doing that? Do I want to add that to the landfill? Those things we're going through now, so we're in the process of that.
Yeah. And please look at that very carefully. I wouldn't hesitate to put a lot of
We
chemicals
just
in
know
the
that dirt
landfill.
works.
Yeah, yeah,
You cut the oxygen off, it dies.
right.
Did you, you said you'd spoken with the fire people, but did you just verbally, or did we give them a plan of action on paper or email?
We sat down and talked to them, the chief, and David Gilbert, and Randy Webster.
I think we need to give them a plan of action or writing, so that they got a copy, we got a copy, at least for our records. Then if somebody comes up here Maybe they get hurt on the storm, I don't know, at least we can say, we gave you a plan of action, you didn't follow it. Liability, just cover your backside.
You know, and they had the pools out, they was ready to start pumping, they put about 1,000 gallons on it before we got here.
Oh, Lord.
Because they cut the lock on it, they put about 1,000 gallons, that's what the chief told us. Or assistant chief, I'm sorry. And, he told us, and, but we went out, we sat down with him, Danny and I sat down with him and explained why you don't do these things and what reactions that it causes. And if they wanna come on site, come on, cut the lock, come on, because we give them we've had them the combination to the gate, they got it, they could come in, but, you know, trying to make sure all the firemen's got it, it's another situation. They're gonna cut the lock, we'll just replace it, that's what we did this last time, we just replaced the lock. If they wanna come in and stand by till we get here, that's fine, gotta realize they typically dirt all the way around that, where the fire's at, so there's not much of a place it'll get out of the rim of things, but, if they wanna come in and watch, that's fine, but we'd rather them wait till we get here.
And I agree with Mr. Johnson. That was great that you went and sat down and talked with them. But they may have a different chief and a different assistant chief and one of them out and a fireman. We need to have a plan of action on paper. It needs to be given to them so they can train their people. And really, I think they should distribute it to a lot of times I'll see 3 or 4 different fire trucks. Even if we may get a city fire truck or a different one, I think all of them need to be sent.
It's gotta do,
That.
it's gotta do a lot with the fire department and who shows up and the volunteer firemen and,
Exactly.
at the Murph, when he called the fire that time, we was having that meeting and I got up and left and he called the fire. If it hadn't been for Danny, probably, they would have destroyed our
Turn that
boat.
6-inch hose loose in there.
Yeah.
They went to get it and we were all up on top and what was the fire up on top? First they wanted to do something, the whole building, no, we can get it.
Yeah.
You know,
You do.
Yeah.
But we do need to have a plan of action, and I think it does need to be distributed, so at least we can say, we've given them this, and you need to keep that available and train your men so that they know this.
Also, when was the last time that we've had them come out here and visit our facilities?
they come all the time.
They do good.
They do Murph and they come out here.
And they do need to be familiar with it and where things are.
What happened that night is the local fire department here was on another fire. So
Okay,
they called fire departments from other places is what they told us, because they had this fire department on another fire.
okay.
And so the fire department that came here was from another location.
Section, and that's why they all need to have our plan of action. Mr. Barry? Any comment?
I'm listening, I'm learning.
When they come out here and visit the buildings and stuff, do we carry them on the landfill and let them visit that? And
They drive through the landfill, they just drive through and look at it, because we recommend that they want to drive through, look at it, see where we at, get an idea where things is.
Sure.
And they come inside the building here,
Fire alarm system.
and they set our fires up, we do fire drills.
Okay.
That's great. That is good that they do, because they do need to know where things are.
And
what
they come to the
locations.
Murph and all of that when it happens,
Yeah,
before we have
because
fire.
it's important for the Murph as well, for them to know where that stuff is and each different thing is and what we actually keep and bail and where it could be. That, they need to know those things.
Like to state for the record, we need dump over here on both these parks for private.
Okay, they're private dumps.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Palmetto Pride adopt a highway.
So we got this recognition, just wanted to make the committee aware that, we got recognition from Palmetto Pride Adopt a Highway for being part of the, Highway 90 cleanup crew for 10 years. So I think it's a good award and, we'll be happy to be a part of it.
And I appreciate the fact that we pick up on either side and do that, and the fact that we've partnered with them and helped them with their assessment on their roads, and I have
8 miles.
8 miles that we pick up.
Pick up and
on
cut
either
ground.
side and cut ground.
Please also include this in the next board package.
And I will say that it is totally embarrassing that the worst road in the county every year is the one that I take, the River Road, to go home.
That's because they ain't no houses on it,
that-
they can get rid of that stuff.
And there's not even any houses on it, so it's people going to the convenience store and getting a nab or a pack of crackers and a drink and throwing it out. And whoever y'all are, shame on you.
I can tell you how far it takes down that road
Yeah,
to eat a Wendy's hamburger. and drink.
absolutely. And how we they get rid of it.
About 3-4 before you get to the river, that's where it starts.
I think we need to send them to Pennsylvania for a while. Whatever they do to them works.
I seen out there in California where the fine's $5,000.
Wow.
They catch you for something.
Well, that would make you stop, I guess. But I think we do a lot of the pickup, and I think that's really a great thing. We have gotten to the end of that, so there's some roundtable discussion. As I always say, if there's anything that you would like to discuss or have on the operations committee, please let me know for the next few weeks. And if there's anything you'd like to discuss now, then we have the floor open for discussion. If there's anything you think you need from staff, any questions, anything you want to have answered or get, now's the time to say.
I think staff's doing a good job, I'm saying.
Okay, thank you, sir. I agree with you. Mr. Knight?
As y'all saw, I got up and left when Craig was leaving. I went out and asked him, how quick he could have, the information that Mr. Johnson asked for, and he said he'd probably have it first of the week. What I will do is get all y'all that information that you'll have prior to the meeting. And then if there's any questions, you can, let us know. We'll get those answers from Craig. Yes, we can.
Okay.
So,
Thank you, sir. Mr. Johnson, anything that you? Okay, we appreciate that. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
so moved.
So moved. We are adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Appreciate it.